the dark side of dentistry.
That dentistry is a very high stress, no control over anything.
We are control freaks, so we're alone all the time. Patient after patient after patient, anxiety. A lot of people resent us. A lot of people don't like what we do. A lot of people are really frustrated with the cost of it, one after another, and we take it on in this tiny prison cell, and then at some point it just blows. The dentist suicide rate is 2.5 times that of the general population. The number one killer of dentists is a stress-related heart disease. Being a dentist increases your risk of suicide by 564%. I still feel frustrated, scared of going back. How the hell am I going to make it work with the new rules?
All these doctors who've now been off for upwards of 2 months, maybe more, none of the overheads have changed, none of the rents have changed. Burden and the emotion of all the teams they've had to lay off. Right now is a time where are really being pushed to the limit because this is the dark side.
We're scared to death, to death.
Welcome back to UPB Dental Academy. I'm Mark Gaylard. I'm here as always with Dr. Agatha. This is the continuing series, Leadership in Times of Crisis. And as you've stayed with us, you know we're traversing professionals on both sides of the border. I'm so thrilled to have Kelley Slagle from Kansas City, a therapist from the USA with us today. There's a lot going on, and we're going to talk about the dark side of dentistry, the dark side of business, and what we're all suffering. Is sometimes considered taboo, but these are the emotions that we're experiencing that need to be brought to the surface in order for us to manage them, to manage our emotions, to be successful as professionals, as spouses, as parents, and as contributors to our community. Kelley, it's our honor to have you here today. You know, give us a brief introduction about you and some of your background, and we'll take it from there.
Well, thank you guys so much for including me in this. I am wildly passionate about proactive mental health practice. I am a clinical social worker, and I also operate as a life coach. I work primarily with individuals who've experienced high trauma and are in very high stress professions, first responders, firefighters, police, military, medical professionals. And I have just dedicated my life to helping people better understand the messages that are behind their anxiety and their depression rather than medicate, judge it, and hide it. And so right. Because I know that to be a part of this, because I know that dentistry is a very high stress profession.
It's interesting you say, you know, when I speak as a coach as well, when we wear that coaching hat, we sort of take on a ton of what's going on around us. We don't realize how stressful that can be. So I'm just curious, there you are in Kansas. I know you're a mom, you're a professional. How are you doing? How are you coping? What are some of the things that you could teach back to yourself to make sure that you're having a successful day every day?
You know what? I'm so glad you asked that, because I think it's one of the most interesting pieces, right? Is you're absolutely correct. We take on so much energetically from people that we work with, right? Because if we are helpers and healers, empathy is our natural language.
You deal with people who suffer from PTSD, from the first responders, police officers, firefighters. Dentists, to some degree, are first responders because they're dealing with a lot of these emotions right now. And there's probably a lot of stories that you're hearing, without mentioning any names. What are some of the emotions and stories you're managing right now, so that this may resonate with somebody who's listening? And because there may be 100 stories out there, but they apply to, you know, you could silo people into groups of 4 and 5, and everybody's experiencing something similar.
Well, I think the number one thing that I'm hearing from people, and you know, we all have thought about it at some level, is I'm really afraid. I don't know how to be in a world like this. It scares us to the core of our being. It makes us, the world is not a safe place. We have no control over anything. Right. That's a really desperate way to feel.
And for a lot of dentists, and their personality is so OCD to begin with, I mean, we are control freaks. So the idea of not having it when we're so used to having it all day with everything we do is so scary.
Well, and I think there's another side to that, which I'm so glad you pointed that out, because I think it's a really important piece that I've noticed in the work that I do is, yes, people that are drawn to professions like medicine or dentistry or first responders, you're organized, you're very capable, highly intelligent, and coupled with that, you're a helper and a healer, a deep helper and a healer. That's why you're drawn to professions like this. You actually, even the people that say they get into it to make a buck, they were drawn to it because they like to heal people and help people.
There's much easier ways to make money than dentistry.
Exactly. Right. And what happens there is this is where we're set up. This is where we are set up.
Yeah.
Because you're so intelligent and you're leading with your head, but the more powerful conversation is that energetic communication that's happening between you and your patient. And to balance those, that's where I like to call mental health mental education, right? It's emotional education. Just like you go every year and get continuing ed to stay up on your practice, to provide your clients and your patients the best, most state-of-the-art treatment. The emotional education is even more vital, especially in the times that we're living in now.
And there's not a lot of that around, especially for when you think about, dentists, and most of us are still in solo practice. Like very few of us actually work in large practices. So we're alone all the time. And you take that alone isolation feeling, right? And then you put it into a tiny operatory, which is usually smaller than a prison cell, and you feel really confined in that space. And then you've got, which is what you mentioned, you've got this patient coming in, patient after patient after patient, with this energy, this anxiety, this, a lot of people resent us. A lot of people don't like what we do. A lot of people are really frustrated with the cost of it. And so they're all coming in one after another, and we take it on in this tiny prison cell. And then at some point it just blows.
Hey, Doc, I know you're all about stats, and you've probably got a bunch of them you want to run by Kelley to get her thoughts and opinion on. I'm going to let you run with it. And if it gets carried away, I'm going to stop you. But I know I never have much luck with that, but we'll see what happens today.
No, I mean, the main thing is, in looking into the numbers on depression and suicide, because there is according to the CDC, the dentist suicide rate is 2.5 times that of the general population, right? And the number one killer of dentists is actually stress-related heart disease. So there is a study that was done by a guy named Stephen Stack, who's a criminal justice professor at Wayne State University. And he's one of the few researchers to study the specific correlation between dentistry and suicide. And his study showed that being a dentist increases your risk of suicide by 564%. That's like a crazy number. So when I came across that, I kind of started looking at, why is it that like so many dentists are struggling with what we do? And the obvious are like, your numbers, your economic pressure, the finances. I mean, it's so expensive to operate a dental practice, but the average debt from dental students when they graduate is over $260,000. Then you have to add the cost of opening or buying a practice. So you're literally $2 million in before you even start. So then you have to keep it running with, the constant operating expenses, the overhead. Then you add on top of that, the way society sees us. I mean, very few people have any tolerance for us complaining at all. Like everybody thinks that we're rolling in money, right? And so there's like no sympathy out there. Like try and complain to your non-dental friends about your day at work, and like you get shot down. And then on top of that, like you get patients that, wait till they have pain to do something. And by the time they come in, many of them can't afford the right treatment. And so then they blame us for the cost of treatment that we recommend. Then, if they don't have money or poor insurance coverage or like low appreciation for quality dentistry, they ask us to patch it up, but have these unrealistic expectations. And then we end up taking on that emotional responsibility for these crappy results. And then something that Kelley mentioned, the whole patient anxiety issue where, and I want you to talk about this especially, Kelley, is the fact that, people come in and if they're stressed, I get stressed, my heart rate goes up, my blood pressure goes up. And then put on top of that my personality with my OCD and my super high expectations and the fact that I'm like wound and uptight and I want things a certain way. And I mean, like, you're just asking for a disaster. So, okay.
Now
Yeah.
So let me jump in.
Right?
Let me jump in. Hang on.
Yeah,
Let me jump in because everything you described was February 29th. So now multiply that.
Those are the people that went into the pandemic. So that is the mindset. I mean, we're still the same, right? I still feel frustrated and like overwhelmed and actually scared of going back, because with the new rules, now not only are we going back to the stress we already had, but now we've got more anxiety about how the hell am I going to make it work with the new rules, with having all the space between people? Like I can't even meet overhead with the new rules.
Yeah,
So,
you've got
right.
You've got doctors too. Let me just add to that, Kelly. I'm going to really fill your plate, Kelly, before I let you answer.
Go for it.
Because you know what? Now we've got all these doctors who've now been off for upwards of 2 months, maybe more. None of the overheads have changed. None of the rents have changed. They've got the burden and the emotion of all the teams they've had to lay off, and how that affects not only that individual, but that trickles down to their family, their kids, their lifestyle. They're taking on all of that. And then they've got the emotion of their home. They're calling the bank. They've got their own mortgages. They've got all these other stressors on top of everything that Dr. Biz said. Right now is a time where people in a small business situation, or most of us, are really being pushed to the limit. How do you help those people manage their emotions? Because this is the dark side. Everybody's talking about the law, and everybody's talking about employment law and bankers. We do that too. We want to bring that information to the forefront. But how do you help these people at their core? Because that's what's going to be the test of whether they survive this or they allow it to consume them.
The silver lining of what we're going through right now is more than ever in the world in which we live, we have unbelievable relatability, right?
Yes.
So
True.
This is where I feel this is the best path forward, is honesty and authenticity, right? When somebody tells you what's going to happen, right? When you explain a procedure, for example, right? And somebody asks you a question and what's the pain level going to be after this surgery, right? Well, what can I expect? And you share the information. The information that you provide may not be what they want to hear, but the fact that you provided that information immediately lowers the anxiety, because now they have information. So they feel empowered. They feel educated, right? So
what a good analogy too. Like I totally relate to that.
Right. So when somebody comes in to your practice and says, and you feel this, right? Okay, so this is what I love so much. So
here she goes.
Could you feel, I was going to ask Mark, could you feel as Dr. Biz was talking, could you feel your anxiety start? Could you feel that kind of the energy kind of get bigger and get like
well,
more?
I'm a master at dealing with her, but
right, but
you're 100% right. Anybody else would have felt that, and that would have put them off their game.
Right, but I use that because this is what I feel the way forward is always, because the dark secret that we're all hiding is we're scared to death. We're scared to death as human beings, not as professionals, as human beings. And that's what I think gets lost between so often in any profession, even in therapy, between therapist and client, between doctor and patient, is I'm scared. There's a piece of me, like we can all relate to feelings. We cannot relate to the same experience, but we can relate to feelings. Mm-hmm. So when the practice reopens and you've got this insane amount, you're carrying a gigantic backpack of concerns. That person sitting in your chair is also carrying a gigantic backpack of concerns. And that does not mean that you need to sit down and hash out your concerns. But, even suited up, touch, energy, compassion, man, doesn't this feel really weird? This feels really strange for me. I've never had to provide care this way before. This feels really strange to me. Does this feel strange to you? Yeah, gosh, I didn't know what to expect when I came in here. Like, it's just, that immediately builds connection. It builds a relationship. They say in business, always, people don't do business with you because of what you know.
Mhm.
They do business with you because of the way that they feel when they're in your presence, because of
Right.
trust.
The experience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a relationship. People want to be seen. We all want to be seen. We all want to feel safe. And going forward, safety is going to be even more important. And emotional safety is the most important safety we experience.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think maybe the last time we felt this much stress from an economic downturn, Aggie, was back in 2008. And that's when you really questioned whether or not this was the career choice for you, because maybe not depressed, but definitely overwhelmed. And I'm pretty sure that there are a lot of not only dentists, but business owners right now who are feeling extreme amount of overwhelm. Maybe you could just share your story a little bit about how you were in 2008, and then Kelley can speak to that.
Yeah, so Mark and I talked about this before because in 2008, I was going to get out of dentistry. I just didn't feel like I made the right choice. Took on a lot of anxiety, took on a lot of debt. Nobody understood me. Like my patients didn't understand the stress that I was under, and they didn't understand. And, my staff didn't understand, and my friends didn't really understand. And so it was just like, and then everybody was coming in and, just all the stuff we talked about earlier. And then I was looking for opportunity to get out, and then the recession hit. And it was like, now I can't get out. So if I'm going to stay in it, for me, I got overwhelmed, which Mark knows, like I call it overwhelm. I don't know what else to call it. And then I go, kind of coast and try and figure out what that means and panic. And then once I get angry, then I go forward and figure out a way. And I figured out a way to how to come back full force. And I love what I do now, and I wouldn't change it. And there's been a lot of things that I've implemented as a result. But for a lot of people, whether you call it overwhelm or depression or, I give up, whatever word or meaning you put to it, a lot of people stay there. And I think that's the challenge. And that's kind of what we're talking about is how do we, once we do this, how do we come back up? Like what?
Right. Okay, so I'm really glad you brought that up because I will share just a little bit about what I have learned basically through the wisdom of observing animals to understand so much. I've been fascinated with anxiety and depression. For years, I come from a family that identifies a lot with anxiety and depression. I have struggled with deep bouts of depression in my own life. And what I've said is now, I believe we get anxiety invitations and depressive invitations. And our nervous systems are not built for chronic anxiety.
Right.
Anxiety has every creature, even a mollusk shell experiences anxiety, right? Anxiety is an alert that something is too much, too fast, or not working for us. Like we're either crossing our own boundaries or letting something cross our boundaries that is not working for us. So when we have these, but now we as a society have become so judgmental about anxiety, right? We entwine it with being weak, chicken, fearful, not capable. Like if we are anxious and we can't handle this, it says something about us. We're broken. Yeah. And so we hide it away. We don't tell anybody about it because if they find out that we can't handle everything, then they are not going to come see us. They're going to think we're not intelligent. They're going to think that we are careless. They're going to think that we are irresponsible, that we are crazy. So we hide it. So then, of course, the irony is the message of why the overwhelm is going to stay there because we're not doing anything to address it. We're not listening to it. And so what happens is it gets louder and louder and louder and louder. The similarities, and many studies back this up, the similarities between emotional health and physical health are very similar. If you cut your toe and you walk around barefoot for days on end, you're probably going to get an infection. And if you don't pay attention to the infection, it's going to get bigger. And if it's going to get bigger, it's going to keep screaming for our attention until we address it, right? We stop and we address it. Our emotional health is the same way. If we're chronically in overwhelm and we're stuffing it down or medicating it away or ignoring it, it's going to get louder. And if we start not to pay attention during the waking hours, it's going to start interrupting our sleep. And if it starts interrupting our sleep, guess what? Then we're going to get sick.
Then we get sick.
And if we're not going to slow down when we're sick, it's going to collapse. So every other creature on this planet listens to that. If they're tired, they lay down unless they're being threatened or their safety is being threatened. They lay down. If they're hurt, they rest. But we as American or as humans supersede that with thought and the story that we tell ourselves what it means. So the number one gift that we have is the ability to start to listen and get curious about how our anxiety shows up for us and how to start listening to that and making the course corrections so that we're not in a chronic state of overwhelm. Because we're not in a state of overwhelm because there's something wrong with us. Most of us who experience high anxiety and depression have very quick minds. And that story steps in so quickly and we start to micromanage and distract and find a solution so we don't have to feel that way anymore. It's actually very ineffective. So can I use you guys an example really quickly?
100%.
Okay. So I would like
one of you guys go and make him look bad.
One of you tell me
she doesn't have that kind of time.
Tell me something that causes you anxiety, like a time you can remember recently or depression that just knocked you.
Not knowing exactly what you said, not knowing what's going to happen next.
Okay, when's a time that you remember it hitting you recently?
Recently, about a week into this, like a week when we got back. A week of living in the reality of the pandemic and the self-isolation.
Okay, so I'm going to try to get you to a more specific. Can you remember standing somewhere or sitting somewhere or lying somewhere and feeling it?
Yeah.
Okay, what did it feel like? Where did it show up in your body?
Like my gut, and I just felt really heavy.
Okay, like heavy. And then what were your thoughts doing? Like, what was your thoughts doing at the time? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what did you do in that situation?
I think I just got angry about stupid little shit around me. Like, something on the floor. I started picking on things around me.
Okay, great. Okay. Such a classic, right? So this is what we do, when we yell at the cashier at Target.
Yeah.
Or, it's like really they forgot to put something in a bag. Like we're not mad about that, right? Like we're really pissed. We're pissed because we haven't listened to ourselves. We haven't listened to ourselves. It's not, it's never you, it's me, right? And so what we do so often, especially those of us who are solvers and fixers, which is, I say it's the cloak that we as helpers wear. We're solvers and we're fixers. But deep down beneath it, we can't continue to solve and fix all the time because we've got no more gas in our tank to take care of ourselves. So in that situation, oftentimes what happens, I think everybody can relate to that, especially in the time that we're in, we get up, we make a list. We get up, we check our bank account. We look at our budget. We think, oh God, we got to redo all our marketing materials right now.
I've done that,
right? All these things, right? It's our attempt to create action so that we can alleviate feeling.
Kel, so I have this giant Post-it note on my fridge now, and I keep adding stuff to it because then I feel good because I'm working on something. I'm doing something.
It's emotional Band-Aids.
Mark,
Emotional Band-Aids. Emotional Band-Aids.
I'm loving this.
And
therapy.
the kicker is, it doesn't work long term, right? So if you were feeling that way and you were on vacation, right? At the beach, and those thoughts are, what would you do in that time?
I don't have those thoughts when I'm on the beach.
Interesting. Why
Because
do you think that is?
how would you feel overwhelmed on the beach? I mean, even when I was on the beach and this stuff happened, and my office called me and we were talking to everybody, I was like, nope, I'm gonna go out for dinner, gonna have some drinks. Like, it doesn't feel, you don't experience overwhelm when you're right.
You were isolated too. It wasn't real. So you're in a box at that time, right? Because I even remember having conversations with you, and none of it resonated to the level that it was happening here, because there was some safety. You were in a box, so you just sort of looked at it from a different set of eyes.
Right. And this is the other reason. You were being wildly supportive of yourself in those times. Wildly supportive of your own. You were sleeping, you were in nature, you were with friends.
Yeah, I was doing everything I wanted to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
The ultimate in self-care, right? So I point those two examples out because the information is exactly the same. You have the same control or lack of control, no matter where you are. So I bring that up because it's really great feedback for our brain as to how crucial the story that we tell ourselves is, how much the story we tell ourselves about a situation impacts us. Brain scientists have hooked electrodes to the brain and shown people videos with no audio. Then they've told the individuals two separate stories about what they're watching. Massively different brain reactions based on the story that they're told.
Right.
Yeah.
So when we go back into our jobs as they look now, that's our number one resource, is being aware of the stories that we're telling ourselves. So if we walk in and we say, well, let's use your office for an example, or anybody's office. Oh my God, I mean, look at this here. I mean, I'm completely garbed. We're going to have no touch. They're not going to feel any connection. This is a cold experience. They're going to be scared. Every piece that I loved about my office, I've had to change. Oh my gosh. I mean, I wouldn't want to come in here. I mean, this is not the way that I want to practice. I feel no control. I'm angry. What do you think the chances are that, what do you think the energy is going to feel like in that experience?
Yeah, it's going to be the problem. Yeah, exactly. I'm going to spaz out, which means everyone's going to be afraid of me, and they're going to go and hide and try and just, do whatever they need to do so that we can get through the day. But the day is going to be crap. So it's interesting that you say that, because as you're talking about, if I go into it, like we were talking earlier with the full gown and I'm complaining about it and everyone's complaining about it, I'm like, as you're saying it, I'm thinking, okay, how do I make it funny? Like,
yes,
go into it. Mm-hmm. How the hell can I have fun with this? Because I'm going to certainly try and put a twist on it, which I never would have thought of until you said it.
Right. And you nailed the second thing that we have access to, which is play and fun. I mean, this is a ludicrous situation that we're in. Mm-hmm. I mean, it is nuts. And what did we all do the very first couple of weeks? What were we all doing between friends and sending and sharing? What were we all doing these first weeks? Yeah, we're doing Zoom happy hours and we're sending ridiculous videos and we're laughing our brains out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the amount of funny stuff I've received in the last few weeks is insane.
And what I'm hearing from people is more and more is, I really kind of liked the first couple of weeks of this, right? I wasn't happy with what was happening in the world. I definitely felt compassion for the people that were struggling. I did have the fear, but man, there were some pretty great pieces to it.
Yeah.
And now as we're starting to talk about the emergence coming out of this and what the world's going to look like, all of a sudden we're serious.
People are getting angry about going back because, like Mark, you were saying about one of your clients who, like, for the first time has had dinner with his family, like so many nights in a row. And I feel like we're spending more time with the people we want to spend time with. so that now I'm anxious about going back because that time is going to get cut when I don't want to cut it. Like, I'm really enjoying spending time with my daughter and spending time with my friends and having all these Zoom parties and really being able to take the time and just, spend 2 or 3 hours with a friend as opposed to, how's your day? Okay, gotta go. Stuff is happening, right?
Yeah. Well, people have connected in the last 8 weeks more on every level than I think we have in our whole lifetime. People are actually picking up. I can't remember, we've talked about this before, how many times I've actually picked up the phone and spoken to another human being as opposed to being pissed off when I see the phone ring. I'm like, why are you not texting me, right?
So is that like, when you think about it, because I've known 2 people in my life. One of them was a patient and another one was a friend who committed suicide. And in neither case has anybody seen it coming. Like, nobody knew. The family didn't see it coming. The friends didn't see it coming. Like, and so I guess, is that the key? Is that when somebody is that low, they really need to be able to reach out and just vent? Is that like what it comes to?
So what it is, and again, the population that I work with, very high rate of suicide in first responders, right? Despair and isolation. And, but there's the nuance. It's what we were talking about before, which is this: I can't let anyone see. I can't admit any of this. I can't let someone see that I'm struggling. If they find out that I'm struggling, man, they're never going to come see me. I'm going to lose all my patients.
That's right.
I'm going to be judged by my peers.
That's right.
What is your message right now that you can say, because there's people that this is hitting them deep,
yes,
that they haven't had an opportunity to reach out. They don't know what avenue to share these feelings with. What's your message to that person? If you're going to give a closing message right now, what would that message be to that person, that individual that could save their life?
You have to find a safe space to be vulnerable. Gift yourself a safe space to share and to unload, because what's happening every time it's stuffed is you're not feeling this way because you're broken. Nothing is broken except the thinking. The story you're telling yourself is broken, and we become so disconnected to why we were drawn to this profession in the first place, which is healing and helping. We cannot heal and help others if we can't admit that we too need healing and helping. We are not static individuals. The one constant in life is change. Yeah. Being vulnerable and authentic, turning around and looking into your own dark corners and admitting that you have them, is the key to growth and strength and resilience. It is the antithesis of being broken. It is what I invite everybody that is afraid to take a first step into vulnerability to think about the last time that somebody asked them for support, and to remember what a gift that is. What a gift you are given when you're able. I guarantee no one has had a patient that has broken down in their chair and said, I'm terrified. Not one practitioner has said, oh my God, get out of my chair. Get out of here. I don't want to see you. It's a gift. Thank God they shared it. And I guarantee those have been some of the most beneficial, like some of the greatest gifts as a practitioner, the greatest gifts to the client and to the person, because a real relationship formed. And that's the basis. That's why everybody goes into these professions, right? But what happens is somewhere along the line, we think we have to be different. We think we have to know it all. We think that we can't be human anymore. And once we do that, we are screwed. We are screwed. And everything starts to suffer. We're so locked off from ourselves that we're locked off from everything. And nothing feels less safe than someone that's locked. We have to save our own lives in connection with others. We cannot do this in isolation. And really, one of the greatest tools that you can do today is to start saying your story, even in a room by yourself, out loud, or write it down and then read it out loud to yourself, because you will see right away how it's not real. It's not true. But when we hold it inside, it becomes insurmountable, and it is the toughest thing to be that courageous. It takes tremendous courage to be vulnerable. It takes zero courage to lock it up. It takes zero courage to strong people share. Strong people have the courage to risk their hearts and to risk authenticity. And you'd be hard pressed to find someone that regrets taking that step.
Well, your point is well taken, especially about people reaching out if they are suffering, if they are bottling this up inside and they don't have an outlet. That the courage comes from the ability to reach out, and the courage is not holding it in. So this has been a wealth of powerful information today. We can't thank you enough. Kelley, we'll definitely get your contact information out there because, like I said, we're on both sides of the border. And if there's somebody that's hearing this right now, they need to just have somebody to talk to, an anonymous person that can give them the guidance and the direction and some hope and some real, forget just hope, but some real action tools so that they can move themselves in the right direction. And we'll do that. We'll do the same thing up here, is get people connected and contact them and put them with the right people so they get through this kind of thing. Aggie, as always, thank you. Really, I'd say this would be probably the most hardcore segment we've done in leadership in times of crisis. I appreciate both of you. Thanks.
A lot of dentists will relate to is that efficiency, and I just want to stay tough and I don't want to share my feelings. But the one thing I can say to anyone listening who has my type of personality is that first thing I'm going to do when I get back is really share with my team, what I've gone through, because I don't do that. I don't tell people that I'm frustrated. I don't tell people that I'm struggling. I don't tell people I'm overwhelmed. I just bulldoze through. So I think the first thing I'm going to do is have a meeting and just say, listen, I just want to tell you kind of my side of what's happened, which I've never done in my life. And sit down, even if it's just a few minutes, and share with your people and your friends, how this is impacting you. Because I tend not to do that. I tend to just hide.
Right. And what you